energy reading for the child. So I'll get into the crystals in a second, but I am going to say really quickly that this is my very first reading since the birth of our son, Wolf and mine. So we posted some pictures on our Facebook page, and we always have a link to our Facebook page in the description of every single video that we put out. So you guys can go on there. You can see the Facebook pictures if you want to see those. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get into the reading now. Okay, so I only have two crystals this time. I have my rose quartz here and my green fluorite. So you can see already kind of a theme going on here because these are both obviously heart chakra stones. And then I have my dragon guardian here. And I've already got, I already have an energy coming up here. Actually, I have a couple of energies coming up here. Okay, so one is feeling like actually some kind of aspect of you. It feels like an aspect of you that's actually guiding you. I don't think we've met this guide before in any of your previous readings. And that's interesting because I was actually getting a feeling before I even went into the reading. I had a feeling um I was probably going to bump into a guide that I hadn't really come across during your previous readings before. Not that I always remember like everybody's guides. Like I do so many readings, obviously I don't remember everybody's guides, but I had a feeling that I was going to come across somebody that I hadn't come across in your previous readings. And I know I didn't meet an aspect of you during a previous reading. But then I do also have like a dragon totem coming up as well. So I think in this case, that's why I felt to draw the dragon for this reading. Now, dragons are really, really mystical. They're really magical and they can kind of summon anything at will. So they're very good at manifesting. They're also very secretive. They're very hidden. And so you definitely have this balance of masculine and feminine energy with these creatures. A lot of times a dragon is female. A lot of times when you come across a dragon, it's female. Like in a lot of spiritual stories and things, and a lot of the spiritual dragons that are called on, a lot of times they're female, but at the same time they have this very masculine energy. And then there's the fact that they fly and yet they're extremely grounded. So there again, there's a balancing energy with the dragon. And yet, like I said, this very mystical, magical kind of hidden quality, very intuitive, and it can summon things at will. I think you were asking something about psychic abilities because I'm remembering that and I'm getting a feeling all of a sudden like that's part of the reason that this dragon is here, that he's kind of helping you with that and helping you with your third eye. And I get this feeling almost of like even like if you carried like a totem, um not a totem, what am I trying to say? Uh feel like you could carry like a flat stone in your pocket, or you could carry something that has like a dragon on it. Um, because there's this feeling of like working with dragons in some way and calling that energy to you, because this is going to help you with increasing your psychic ability, increasing your third eye. So there's this feeling with the third eye. It's almost like, okay, in our society, it's like we're not really trained and taught to use this on an ongoing basis. If we were, like from childhood, like some people are naturally just very open since childhood and they end up keeping it or they come back to it later. Obviously, some people have something, yeah, that does happen to them, and all of a sudden it triggers it, right? Um, but there's this feeling like, so for most people it's like your third eye is sleeping a little bit and it has to be kind of activated, because like I was saying, or like your guide was saying, um it's like we don't use the abilities as much. We're not taught to use them as much, and a lot of people are using them all the time anyway, but they don't really question and think, am I using a psychic ability? They don't really understand that that's what they're doing. They just get a gut feeling or whatever, and they might learn to follow it, but they don't necessarily think of it as like some other sense, like it's a psychic ability, and they don't necessarily trust it in that way where they're really like aware of it, where they're really like consciously using it so much. Even if they trust it to a degree and they are following it, like I said, it's not necessarily extremely conscious on their part. And a lot of people do that, just like a lot of people are empathic, but so many people don't realize that they are. And so your guide is saying, so it's like there's this, um, it's abnormal, but in a sense, it feels kind of natural here in this society to have this like shutting down of your psychic awareness. He's saying something like almost like an asleep syndrome or something like this. Like it just kind of shuts off and falls to sleep, like more and more and more and more as people tend to get older. That he's saying that the opposite can happen as well, um, where it's kind of revived slowly but surely until it wakes up. And then maybe it can seem to some people almost like there is a defining moment. Um, but he's basically saying that whether there's like an exact moment where you realize, oh wow, that's my psychic ability coming through, um, there were always all of these increases all along the way, right? Until you notice something consciously. Or it might not happen in that way. It might be all these little things and all these little things where you notice all these smaller triggers, right? It's not like some um, defining moment, like you were calling it. He keeps sending a feeling of like hypnosis. Um, okay, hold on here a second. Okay, so he's talking about almost like hypnosis as a trigger, or even trances as a trigger. But but I keep calling it a he. I keep calling it a he, but I'm just gonna say dragon because I don't know that it's really a he. Even when a dragon is female, a lot of times I'll just feel this very like masculine kind of energy with it. But I feel almost like I'm being corrected. So I don't know if the dragon is female or the dragon is almost like it has an androgynous kind of thing going on. No, I feel like this dragon is female, but I feel like there's a lot of masculine energy with this dragon. And I do come across male dragons as well during readings at times. Um, okay. So anyway, so dragon is talking about um it's almost like a trance can be a trigger for your third eye because she keeps talking about it being in like a sleeping state. So it's almost like you're consciously putting yourself into an awareness during like a sleeping state. So you're in more like a hypnotic kind of state, or you're in like a trance like kind of state. And this almost pulls that up. So this can almost trigger it because it's like your third eye is already in that state, if that makes sense. And then you're sort of going into that place where your third eye is. And you're kind of being with it there, but consciously. So then this so then these abilities step more into your consciousness. They become more conscious, or they become more allowed even to express in a conscious way. Because right now there's a feeling like, yes, they're operating, but almost in a more subconscious way. And it feels like your subconscious is allowing them, but consciously, um, there's still this need to allow it. So yeah, she's pointing out that usually we have like a block in our subconscious, and that's what's really blocking us. But sometimes we can break through that block subconsciously, and then there's still this little bit of something in our conscious mind. That's actually much easier to break through, though, a lot of times than the subconscious uh, than the subconscious part of it is, because that's deeper. It's more, you have to do like a lot of reflection. You have to go into it and understand the mystery of it, because it's not so conscious, right? So it's not as apparent. So stepping more into that state can trigger it more. So this would be, um I mean, obviously you can literally do something like hypnosis. But you could also, just because she's also saying like trances, I mean, you can also do self hypnosis, or you can just try and really, really, really relax and get into like the deepest meditative state that you can go into. And this would really trigger that. Okay, and she's also bringing up the state, um, sort of as you're falling asleep. So it's almost like you're not really awake anymore, but you're still conscious. You haven't fully drifted into your subconscious reality yet. And she's saying the same thing with like when you're waking up. Um, as you're just waking up, oftentimes it's almost like we're still dreaming as we're waking up. Like we're not fully awake yet. We're not fully conscious yet, but we're already awake. Yeah, she's saying so it's almost like your brain is almost like coming back. It's almost like your consciousness is like coming back. So it's almost like in this like little tunnel between I'm asleep and I'm like fully consciously awake again. Even though like you've already woken up. So those states, that's also important to watch out for, because she's saying that kind of in between state can also trigger your abilities and your third eye. If you use it properly, it can manifest like coming into your abilities and into your psychic gifts. Okay. So she's also saying that you are empathic. She's also noting that most people are empathic to a degree. Some people are much more conscious of it, and it affects them a lot more. They're more aware of it, or that's just a stronger sense. But most people have it to a degree, and the reason she's pointing that out is because that makes that specific ability much more easy to master in a sense, or much more easy to bring out, just because that is a little bit more common. And for some reason, she's saying it's a little bit more understood. Um, almost like you, almost like your mind doesn't have to take as much of a leap to feel like they can feel. Um, because empathy is almost similar to sympathy in a way, is what she's saying. So it's almost like your mind, it's almost okay. She's basically saying like if you're feeling sympathy for someone else, and if you have the ability to do that, then it's almost like your mind has permission to almost go into the feelings of the other person. So it's almost like a way we have of understanding one another, but we're often actually picking up on the feelings of the other person, but we're not really taught that there again. So we don't really understand that. We don't really realize that. But she's saying that it's very usable. Even like in our society, it's more usable, but people are going to call it, understanding someone, or they're going to call it sympathy, or something like that, is what she's saying. But they are using it more often, and it's more usable, um, like in, by our society's definitions, in other words, more so than um, more so than some other psychic abilities like telling the future, or something like that. Most people wouldn't feel like they really need to use that as much. Whereas something like empathy is something that you can use just as you're communicating with anyone. So she's also saying that that one is very easy to bring out. So you might already be experiencing some of that as well. So, so she's also saying to focus on also understanding all of your experiences and being open to perhaps realizing that you're already using psychic abilities, um, and you just don't understand yet that that's what you're doing. Like you're not always aware that that's what's happening. Yeah, because sometimes she's saying sometimes we're so used to using them, and they do actually feel normal, but and she's saying, and they're not abnormal, they are normal. So it's abnormal to feel like they aren't normal. But she's saying that some some are thought of in a sense as more usable to us, but we call them something else, and we're taught that they're something else, and we don't understand what we're using or what we're doing, or that we're sensing something beyond, or that we're actually connecting to someone's emotions, and that's why we're feeling for them. You know, that's why we have sympathy that we do, or that's why we're able to connect to them, or understand their perspective, etc. But a lot of times we're actually picking up on the person. But like she was saying, we're taught that it's something else. And so we don't understand that we're using them. So yeah, she's just saying to be open to possibly coming to the conclusion that you really are using a lot of the abilities that you already have, but again, you're using them in a more subconscious way. You're not understanding consciously um, that they're there to be used, and you're not understanding consciously that you're already using them in some cases. So sometimes that's what she's referring to. Sometimes she's actually referring to subconscious in this other way. Um, Not so much a shutdown, but the fact that you are using them already, but you're using them subconsciously versus consciously, for the reason that you just you're not aware that you're already using them. So this is subconscious in two different ways. She's meaning here. Okay. Okay. I'm going to pull up these questions as I feel your guides coming up, but they are kind of pausing for a minute. But I feel like a different guide may be coming up now as opposed to this dragon guide. Okay, so with regards to the first question, I'm going to go ahead and just read the third question for a second. Okay. That's more kind of general. Okay. Your guides are kind of they're kind of tying the first question in with the second question a little bit. The psychic question, surprisingly enough, because it doesn't seem like they go together at all. But they're basically they're starting out by saying that, okay, when you do have this empathy, um, and you're not really realizing it, and so you're not really harnessing it or using it, but you're more letting it use you in a sense, because you're not consciously using it yet. Right. So when it's subconsciously being used, then it can just kind of, run amok, and you don't really have the ability to control it because you don't even really know that it's there. So they're saying that this also gives other people the ability to sort of pull on your heartstrings and sort of even vampirically kind of take some of your energy or kind of zap some of your energy. Um, but it feels like in an emotional way. It feels more like the way that they're saying vampiric is almost like somebody who kind of sucks you in, almost like they're almost, they want to use this word hypnotic again, or hypnosis again. um because they're saying something almost like a delusional feeling is is kind of how they're coming in with it. It's like if you're not aware of this gift that you have, you can sort of end up being pulled into a certain state or into a certain feeling, um, by someone who wants to sort of pull you into that energy or pull you into that emotion. But then they're really just going to end up kind of using that emotion that you weren't even really feeling yourself, um, or where it wasn't really triggered by your own emotional reactions. And then it's almost like then your emotions do react eventually, because but almost in this way of almost like you snap out of it, sort of. um and then you have a different emotion, and it feels almost like the emotion is a little bit more logical, um and it rings more true. But that's but that's actually because you're the person feeling it, is what they're saying. It's not something that's sort of being delivered to you. And this doesn't mean, okay, this doesn't mean, okay, in this case, they're not really meaning that you're tapping necessarily into another person's exact emotion. Um, they more mean like a person can pull you into so it's almost like someone can sort of send you a vibe to be in a certain emotion that they're not feeling. Okay. Versus, um usually with empathy, right, or like they're saying, like with true empathy, you have somebody, they're feeling something, they're feeling a specific thing, It can even be a physical thing, right? Maybe they're feeling a specific pain in a specific location of their body, and now you start feeling it. But in this case, it's more like someone subconsciously, right, taps into your ability. Um, and then they can sort of harness that or use that. They can sort of pull that out of you to sort of feel a certain way. So that's another reason that they're kind of wanting to use this word like trance kind of, because it's like it pulls you, um because again, you're subconsciously using the ability. So again, it has to do with your subconscious as well, and just lack of a conscious awareness, lack of a conscious understanding of what's taking place. And get the feeling from them like you've kind of had that your whole life. Um, like there have been moments where you've like attracted someone who who did that, who had that kind of behavior. Like they get you to feel something that they're not feeling, and they do it because you have this ability to feel what others are feeling. Strangely enough, you have the ability to connect with an emotion, so they can sort of draw that out, but then they can almost um, send a specific emotion or kind of implant a specific emotion that they're not really feeling themselves. And they're saying that this is a pretty like manipulative kind of thing. And they're saying that this is kind of a cycle that some people just get into, um, if they're hurt or they have their own kind of emotional trauma or upheaval that they don't really understand themselves in a conscious way yet. They don't know how to handle it or how to deal with it. And then they can kind of end up psychically attacking people. But they're saying that it's a subconscious thing. Um, so they're not always 100% aware that they're doing it, but at the same time, they're still trying to manipulate you. They may not obviously understand the way how they are actually going about doing it. And obviously, they're not understanding, oh, you're empathic, and I'm sending you this vibe because you're empathic, and I can use your. No, they're not like sitting there thinking this logically because they're not really aware of any of that. Um, but they are kind of more aware of coming across in a certain way, to pull something from you. Whereas someone who wasn't so empathic, or at least who maybe was, but um, they were more aware of how to use it, how to block themselves and guard and protect themselves. And um, so they would possibly be able to see it in a much more clear way, and they wouldn't really get drawn into that or caught up into that. So they want you to just guard your aura a little bit more, and be aware that Um, Sometimes there are people out there who want to manipulate or that do have kind of a negative feeling, a negative intention, and it might also be subconscious. Um, they might not be literally thinking in their head, oh, I'm going to do this to this person, I'm going to manipulate this person, or I'm going to use this person, or they might be. So you have like kind of two different types of people. Some are doing it in a totally subconscious way, but you should still stay away from those people. And then some are kind of doing it in a half way. But I do get the feeling from your guides, like most people that are doing those types of behaviors, they it's like they are meaning it to some degree for some reason. Like they were saying, because of some old hurt that they have, that they are still going through, but in a subconscious way where they're not really looking at it, they're not really healing it because they don't know how to. And so they've just kind of ended up in this cycle. And it's not like, oh my God, there are so many people out there like that. There's like no positive people, or the majority of people are bad or this or that. That's not what your guides are saying at all. They're more saying that you can sometimes pull in those people um, just to show you something. And because of things that you are not so aware of, that you need to be more aware of within yourself. But one thing is to be a little bit more um, like protective of your energetic space, and it feels like to pull your energy back a bit more. So it feels like sometimes your energy kind of almost like leaks out or like kind of moves um, forward, like in a forward direction. Um, and they're saying that it kind of needs to be kept back a little bit. It needs to be kept more in your aura because that's where it's going to be more protected. That's where it's going to be more safe and more secluded. And that's where you're going to be able to look at things from more of a logical angle where you can see something in a more clear way. Obviously, they're saying you can see something from an emotional standpoint and still see it in a clear way, um, but not in a way where you are like emotionally like involved or entangled in it, not in a way where you have attachments, because that's not true emotion anyway. That's an emotion being influenced by a negative attachment. So it's not really just a pure uninfluenced emotion anymore. And it's not just a positive emotion either. It's an emotion that is almost being convinced of something because it is attached to a certain belief or a certain idea or a certain person or a certain thing that it wants to feel or that it wants to think. There's also a feeling that a lot of times these people are male. It feels that way. And they're saying that you need to look at that as well. Like, why would a lot of these people be male specifically? And not that they can never be female either. And so I will throw that out there. Um, but that it almost feels like the majority have been male. And it feels like there's this kind of openness with you as well. Um, but in a way where they almost want to say like don't um to not be too naive, and again to kind of not let your guard down so much. There is a feeling like that. But on the other hand, openness is good. Like, your code name, even they're calling you the child. So that's a good thing. And that even means that you have the capacity to come into psychic abilities more. You have the capacity to be able to speak to your guides in an easier way, and even in a more tangible way, like where you can feel them more easily, where you can sense them more easily, as you continue to let that out. But that's definitely a quality that a child has, because a child is open. So there's positive and there's negative ways to be open. So they want you to keep your positive ways that you're open, and yet at the same time and work to stay open in those areas and even open up more in those areas. But then on the other hand, in some areas and in some cases, to not let yourself be influenced. And so that means, staying a little bit more in your own space and emotionally kind of, um, in a sense, closing off a little bit, not being so open. Yeah, and they're saying sometimes people take that in like a really negative way. A lot of times when somebody's like closed off, um, a lot of times that's seen as more negative, but they're saying when someone's like, you know, um, overly open, when they're a little bit more open than they need to be, that's also negative. And so then if they close off a little bit, they're still going to be open, um, but just not so open that it's affecting them in a negative way. So you can still be open, but just not overly so. And not where you can't see something really clearly, where it can really benefit you if it's meant to, or it benefits you by you setting a boundary and just letting it go. But they're saying that old attachments have to be let go of. And they're saying that a lot of times an old attachment comes up just to show you that it's still there so that you can release it. And sometimes an old attachment comes up because it's time to release it, they're also saying. They're showing me a picture of like almost like pores in someone's face. I don't know why they're showing me this picture, but they're showing me almost like pores in someone's face, and like how your pores can get like dirty. They can get like almost like blackheads, or like, you can get like things that are like stuck in your pores. And they're saying like you can wash the surface of your face, um, but there's still going to be this, almost like this poison back in there, and eventually that's going to like show. And they're saying, so eventually those are going to come out on your face, and you're going to see them, and you're going to be made aware of them. You're going to be made aware of what you weren't seeing on the surface of your face necessarily. And they're saying that's what old negative attachments are like. It's like they're down in there in a place where you can't see them, and you're holding on to them. And it's because you're holding on to them that they're down there in this like dark place where they're hidden from you. You can't see them. But eventually they're going to show up, because they are still there, and you have to cleanse them out. And that's another thing. They're saying as you're stepping more into a sort of trance-like state, you know, or this place in between asleep and awake, and you are attempting to manifest, becoming more conscious of your subconscious abilities, whether it means they're more shut off, or it means that you're already using them currently and you're just not consciously aware of it. Um, in either case, they're saying that as you go more into that state, um, they're saying to keep in mind sometimes it's like patterns and things that block you, right? They're also in that same state. That's also a space where they reside. They reside in this like, well, I'm using them, I'm acting out of this stuff, but I'm not really aware of it. I'm not really consciously understanding everything that's happening with that. So it's in the same kind of space of, I'm using these psychic abilities, I have them, but I don't really know that I'm using them because I always use them. And so I don't really think of them as a psychic moment or what have you. I've always acted out of them, or I have for a long time, or I've always seen people around me behave in this way. So this is acceptable for somebody to behave in this way that I'm used to. And I'm triggered by it, but it's still normal. But they're saying, but you being triggered by it should actually say something. It should say something to you if you're being triggered by it. It could be, this person really didn't say anything that was really bad or harmful. Um, and I need to look at that, in myself. Like, what was I feeling, um, that caused me to react in that way, or what's there that would cause me to react in this way when someone is expressing something that is good, and I'm just perceiving it in a bad way, right? But then it can be the other way around. It can be, not that this person was just saying something that was good, or um, where it wasn't something that really would have affected anyone else. Now you have someone that is almost purposefully triggering you, even if they're doing it subconsciously. They're saying something just to get under your skin, and then you sort of, it's like you sort of hold on to it by not um, sort of owning how triggered you were. Let me make sure I'm getting that right. So it's almost like you need to own that you had that reaction, and you should have had that reaction because that was this person, and they were putting that out in a specific way to get you to react, to get you to feel something that isn't positive. Whereas on the other hand, with the other person that they were kind of describing, they're not saying something negative towards you and you're just taking it in a negative way, then that means that it's triggered from, they're not meaning to trigger you, and they're not saying something. It's like they said, they might not consciously be meaning to, but they're also not saying something that should be triggering you, right? And so that would mean it's something from your own past. It could be your past lives, you know, or it could be something in this life, even from a long time ago, or something that you're just used to seeing, or you're used to reacting in a certain way. But there's this feeling coming from your guides that as you're letting your psychic abilities up, some of this other stuff is going to come up too. Just because, like they were saying, it resides in the same territory, because it's all subconscious. So it's all coming to the forefront. It's all becoming more conscious. And as you stir up one thing, you know, when you're allowing it and you're letting it become more conscious, there are going to be other things that are in its same realm, you know, um, that are going to end up being pulled up too. They're using this analogy with face again. They're showing me this again. Like, if you're trying to get like one specific like blackhead out of your face, you know, um, and you're using something, you're putting something on your face, right, to get this out of your face in this one specific spot. They're saying, you know, you're going to end up cleaning areas around it without really meaning to, just because they're in that same area, you know, they're in that same part of your face. So those are going to come out. They're also sending a feeling like it's also important to be aware of like who else in your family has had similar patterns. Um, like in this specific area. There's even a feeling like who else in your family is empathic, because they're kind of sending this feeling like you're not the only person in your family. Like they were saying, a lot of people have it to a small degree, but they're saying to like a higher degree, to like a more significant degree. You're not the only person in your family that has that to like a more, to like a higher degree, a more noticeable degree. But I get the feeling that this person is not really aware of that. Um, I know like they were even saying like with you even you're not like fully aware of the empathic thing, but even less it feels like with whoever they're speaking about. Feels like they're not really aware of this at all. They wouldn't even necessarily be open to the idea of like an empath. Oh my gosh, it's so funny when someone is like really empathic and they don't believe in empathy or any of these things, but they're like experiencing it all the time. But yeah, your guides are just saying, well, that's really what they mean by um, you know, our society and how they're using it all the time, but they don't know and they call it other things. But I also get the feeling that this person, it's not like they believe in nothing. Um, it's not like they would be completely closed to that or something. But it just feels like they're very unaware of like a concept like that. And they wouldn't necessarily be like really into the idea or something like that, especially not with themselves for themselves. But it's good to sort of examine your family lines and your other family members, and see what you're reflecting, see what you've picked up from other people around you who raised you, or they were just like in your same living space as you were growing up or as you were a teenager. People whose energy you might have absorbed, especially since you are empathic and you're cleaning this out. So be thinking about whose patterns you could absorb. But they're saying that that's also another reason why it's so important to clean out your space regularly, but also to keep it more guarded, in like a healthy way, where you're closed off in a healthy way. So you're still open to a degree, but not in a naive way or in too open of a way, but in a way where you're more guarded, you're more safe. That's another reason. It's because you do absorb energy. You do absorb energies into your energy field, being a more like significant impact. Okay, so that is all that your guides have to say for this reading. So thank you so much, the child, for allowing me to do another reading for you. And as always, I truly hope that this reading has benefited you. Thank you very much. Namaste.